Okay, so we are learning Kuzari. We began the section where we're basically talking about how old is the world? How old is the world? Because we mentioned that Moshe Rabbeinu, he told us, as we were talking to, getting deeper into who are the Jewish people and what's the higher level of creation, and then we came to the understanding that there is a human being that represents a nation, and he's basically the prototype. He's the person that reached the highest level of potential of being the Jewish nation, and he did things that are above nature. He didn't eat or drink for 40 days, Moshe Rabbeinu. He didn't sleep. He didn't. He could walk into fire. His face was beaming so bright. After not eating 40 days and 40 nights, not sleeping, usually somebody doesn't eat, he becomes weaker, less light. Pale. Here, beaming. He had to wear a mask because you can't look at his face. And not only that, he also told us all of the past. He told us all of the history of the world of creation. He told us the past, he told us the future. And the king, this is like the question from all the things I just mentioned of Moshe Rabbeinu. There are a lot of things that you could say expand on. Expand on that he didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't sleep. He knew when he was going to die. And when he died, he knew exactly when he was going to die. And he died, he went like as if he went to sleep. He'd lie down. And at a certain time, he told everyone, in a year from now, the whole book of Dvarim is Moshe Rabbeinu's final speech. He knew he's going to die. At this time, this hour, lied down, went to sleep, and died. Would you agree that this is a new, like a level of a creation, like something that is beyond anything we know? Yes, that is the Jewish people. We're eternal. The laws of nature don't apply to us. Every nation comes and goes, like a human being is born and dies. Nations born and they die. Jewish nation is above nature. We live forever, and we're eternal, and we're above nature. There's no other explanation. How we exist, it's a new creation. So from all the list of things that we mentioned about Moshe Rabbeinu, the thing that the king most wants to understand, how did he know the past? He told us, right? We mentioned that he. Where is that?
Is there any more Kuzari books here?
It's over here, yeah. So we mentioned that, right? I was reading to you the words of the Kuzari. This is 41, the first chapter, 41. It says, and we said, he told us what was and what will be. He told us everything that was. And the king says, wow, this is an angel. This is nothing that I've ever come in contact with. So, Vehodia, and this is what it says, Vehigid lahem anelam, he told them the hidden things that happened in the past. Ve'ech haya chidush ha'olam, and how the world was created from nothing. Chidush ha'olam means there was no world, nothing existed, and suddenly it existed. So he told us about how God made the world exist from nothing. Remember that this is what the Christians say, this is what the Muslims say, but we're going to get to in a minute what do the philosophers say, and that's really the discussion now we're going into, is discussing this question of the world being created from nothing. And this is, the Ramban writes, that this is what the words of the Ramban, the Torah had to start with Bereshit bara Elohim. And by the way, it's perfect timing we're learning this, because here we are today. These are the days of creation, right? 6 days of creation, and then Rosh Hashanah is the day that God blew life into Adam. He blew a soul, right? He took from the earth, Vayipach be'apav nishmat chaim, and he blew into him life, and that's the shofar is us basically becoming be created again every year. It's Hashem's giving us life. Yom Adin, it's the day of judgment, the day of new life. That's why we blow shofar, because Hashem is blowing life into us. Our soul is being given into us. This is the day that Adam was created. And the Ramban writes, the Torah had to start with Bereshit, because this is the root of faith. Shoresh ha'emunah, u'she'eino ma'amin bazeh, and whoever doesn't believe this and says that the world always existed, hu kofer ba'ikar ve'en lo Torah klal, you don't believe in God and you don't believe in the Torah. So it's a very fundamental faith of the Jewish people, is this belief that God created the world. And it helps us understand a very important, it puts things in perspective. We don't create. We could form things, we can take material and make things out of it, but we can't create something from nothing. There's a very, very clear distinction between the creator and the created. And that's the big problem of Christianity, is that they mix it up, that they say that the person, Yeshki, he's God. So wait, you're saying a person is God? That's the line, that's idol worshipping, that's like the line where it breaks. But here we're asking a very important question, as we mentioned, that Moshe Rabbeinu told us how the world was created from nothing. And this is a very important understanding for us to understand. So the first thing that the king says, the first question that that the king asks the rabbi, the Kuzari asks the rabbi, so what do you answer? And also this the incredible thing that every Jewish person from one corner of the world to the other corner of the world all agree that Adam was created 5,780 years and 84 years ago. All Jews, no disagreement. And that's something that is astonishing. The king hears this and says, wow, I can't believe this. How could this be? It's impossible. You know, if some people say like this, some people like that, everybody agrees. Imagine, two Jews can't agree on one thing. And here is a fact that every Jew agrees on. Adam Arishon, the first human being the first godly human being, the first human being with freedom of choice, the first human being that was a refined person, that had one wife and he had Chava, and he communicated with God, and he was moral, and he was righteous. So now we're going to these questions. What about, the king asks, the Kuzari asks the rabbi. And we're reading number 60. Amar Kuzari, ve'ech lo yifgom alecha emunatcha azot, מה שאומרים על אנשי הודו, כי יש מקומות אצלם, ובניינים, וברור אצלם, כי יש להם מאות אלפי שנה. So what will you answer the people in India? They have a belief that the world is hundreds of thousands of years old. Right? So he says, I'm sorry, but Amar, and they say they have proof, they have buildings, and they can prove that the world is hundreds of thousands of years old. Amar Chaver, זה היה מפריע לאמונתי, אילו נמצא דעה מדעית. Yes, it would bother me if these people had any proof, any facts, any scientific information. If they even agreed on, like they had a few people that agree, everyone says something else. You're talking about this nation of India, that these people, they get everybody angry because they all make up things. They have so many tales and imaginary worlds. There's no discussion. These people, whatever they say is completely nonsense. There's no partner here to have an intellectual discussion. They have no facts, no proofs, nothing in reality. And the king accepts that. Okay? But the important message that we're trying to say here, and this is very important for us to just go back. We spoke about this last week. First of all, how do we say that the world, we say Adam was born 5,784 years ago. And then we say the rest of the world was created 6 days before that. How do we say that the world is only 6 days old? When today they have machines, they could check all kinds of ways of checking that the world is millions of years old. And you have caves in France where you can see pictures that people drew. So what do you answer to that? You could see that there's carbon ways to check carbon. You know how old it is. There's all ways of checking all kinds of things. And so come on. How could you say the world is only 5,784 years ago? So the first question is, how do you at all measure a day? How do we measure a day? Based on the sun, right? The 24-hour cycle of the sun. The sun was only created on the 4th day. So how are you calculating the 4 days before that? On what measurement are you calculating? And the Midrash says there was people before Adam Arishon. But the person that we all count by, the person that counts, the person that actually can begin to count, the person that is godly, that is a holy person, is Adam Arishon. And in Judaism, we're trying to teach you an important lesson. We begin to count based on the revelation of God in the world. We want to say that the creation of the world is just a few days, like a few days before Adam, because it's connected to Adam, because the whole world was created only for Adam. If the world doesn't have a purpose, if there isn't a tzaddik in the world, if there isn't someone who is serving God, all of creation doesn't have any right to exist, any purpose, any existence. And therefore, we start counting from the person who is the righteous person, who is the tzaddik, who is the godly person. So that puts things in perspective. Scientifically, you may be right, the world is billions of years old. But you're missing the point. And this is what he's trying, we're in with number 60. And this is the point that the rabbi is trying to first teach the king. Look at the world in a moral of understanding. Change your whole perspective. How old something is based on material is meaningless. It's like as if I'm going to tell you how old you are based on the clothes you're wearing, how old your clothes are. I calculate how old you are based on you when you were born. You have clothing that was before you. Who cares? It's not important. So learn to understand, and that's what we said. The word history and the way Rav Kook would spell it is hester. Yeah. The word of the interest of the Torah is the revelation of God in the world. The revelation of God in the world began with a very holy person named Adam Harishon, the first man. And this is really, the world only has a right to exist when there's godliness in it, when there's people that reveal God, when the people serve God. So this is the first message that we're trying to say, and there's no argument. Okay, the world's billions of years old, but that's not. Then you're missing the point that the world was created to serve man, and it's created to serve man who is created to serve God. And when he's doing his mission, when he's fulfilling his calling, then everything has a right to exist. It says that when God gave us the Torah, it says, "Vayamdu Yisrael b'tachtit ha'ar." We stood under the mountain. What does that mean? Rashi says, "Kafalim hal kigigit." God took the mountain, put it above our head, and said, "If you receive the Torah, mutar, great. If you don't, the world is turning back to chaos, to tohu vavohu. The world has no existence unless you have the people, the holy people, the people that are serving God, that are using the world to serve God and uplifting world. And it's not a threat and a danger, it's just a reality. The world can only exist with serving God, and that's the purpose of life, that's the purpose of creation. And so therefore, so he says, so what do you have to say? So, and this is a new way of looking at the reality. So he says, so what are you going to answer to these Indian people in India that have all these hundreds of thousands of years of creation? So he says, sorry, these people are way. There's no one to talk to. And the king says, okay, the king, the philosopher, the king is also a deep thinker, and he says, I agree with you. Naniach she'ani ta'anti kenegdecha ba'asafsuf. Okay, you're right. I brought you, a question that was, these people really are talking nonsense, old wife tales and imaginary worlds and all kinds of things. So there's nothing to talk about. Ube'am she'enam maskimim al davar echad. You're right, and there's no, how do you say, nobody agrees on one thing. So this guy says this, because there's no one to talk to face to face. Here we're Samech Bet, okay, 62. So ve'itev telashiv. You're right. They don't agree on each other. They don't agree with it. So there's no one to really talk to. Uma ze tomar b'filosofim vehem b'machkarei b'dikduk b'makom shehem. What are you going to answer the philosophers that they came with proofs and facts that, and this is something that is already a deeper. They're science. They're bringing science. They're bringing facts. They're bringing proofs. They're bringing intellectual discussions. They agreed the world always existed. Now here we're not saying the world's hundreds of thousands of years old. We're saying the world always existed. Has no past and obviously no future. If there's no creator, okay, if I create something, I built a house. I had a thought in my mind why I'm building it. I have a thought, I want people to live here. So it has a purpose. If I created something, it's because the architect had something in mind, right? And that's what we're saying. What the architect had in mind, the creator of the world, was for Adam, a holy person, a righteous person, to serve God, to be godly, be moral, use his freedom of choice for positivity, to be a refined person. So then I understand. But if there's no creator, there's no purpose. And therefore, what are you going to say? So the answer that the rabbi gives. The philosophin yesh hitnatzlut. The philosophers, we have to judge them to kav zchut. We have to give them benefit of the doubt, or we have to we can actually be a little more understanding why they made their mistake. Okay, what's their mistake? So the answer that the Kuzari, the king, is going to bring to all the questions is historical. Everything he works through is historical. The Torah tells us an historical story. Moshe Rabbeinu was the historian. And here we're going to answer, how do you answer the philosophers that say the world has no beginning? Always existed. אמר חבר, לפילוסופים יש התנצלות ושהם היו עם שלא ירשו חוכמה ולא דת, כי הם יוונים. So he starts telling him why they made a mistake. Why did the philosophers were wrong? Because the philosophers, they were not, and here we're talking about Aristotle. Aristotle was one of the greatest minds, the greatest thinkers, scientists, genius, maximize the human ability using your intellect to to really come up with incredible understandings of depth and truth. But in this thing, he made a mistake. Why did he make a mistake? Because the world is split to three. The whole world basically started again from Noach. And then you had Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Right? So Hem Yavanim, and they're Greek. Aristotle was from Greece. ויוון מבני יפת שוכני הצפון, וחוכמה באה בירושה מאז מאדם. So the world is split to three. Noach had three children, Shem, Ham, and Yafet. Shem was the thinker, the godly person. The wisdom was all connected to Shem. Ham was the body, was all connected to the materialism. And Yafet was the beauty. The word Yefet in Hebrew, Yafeh, is beautiful. Yavan is the letters Noi, which is also another word for beauty, aesthetics. The word, right? So Yefet. So the wisdom was inherited from Adam down to Noach, and Noach was split to three. And Noach was the Segula. He was this person that was given this wisdom. And then and the wisdom always sticks with this nation, the nation of wisdom, which is, like they call the Jewish people, the nation of the book, the nation of the wisdom. This was Shem, and then Ham was the body, and Yefet was the aesthetics. They were very good in Greece in music and art and plays and sculpturing and art. Everything had to do with aesthetics. This was their talent. This was their skill. What happened? But then what happened? The Greeks conquered the world. They became the superpower. And they said, wait, if we are going to be running the world, we have to also have answers for everything. We also have to create universities. We also have to be, we have to be in charge of thoughts and ideas. And it's not enough if we want to stay for long term. They're smart. Any nation that wants to hold out for a long time has to have wisdom, has to have thought, has to be creating the knowledge. And then when they brought in the philosophers, and when they were at their peak, when they were at their they were the superpower. So they basically, when they conquered Persia, they also conquered the wisdom, the people from there, and they got Aristotle. And now they said to him, okay, now we have to give answers to everything that has to do in the world. We need answers for every question in the world, because we are now the superpower, and we have to give answers for everything. And that is the opposite of what we call intellectual integrity. You have to know how to say you don't know everything. You can't have answers for everything. And also, this is like what we call a one-hit wonder. They popped out of nowhere. What about discussing people before you? What about making a round table of all the people in the wisdom of the world discussing? Where is humility? Right? In order to be a person that is we call, it's interesting, in Judaism, what do we call a wise person? Our smartest person. What's he called?
Chacham.
No. Keep going. Close to that.
Gaon.
What do we call the smartest person? We say a Talmid Chacham. Right? What do we call? We see a great rabbi. What do you say about him? Hu Talmid Chacham. What does that mean? He's a student of a wise person. One day, Rav Tzvi Yehuda was walking down the street here. He was 80 years old. And someone asked him, "What do you do in life?" Or what's he? "Oh, I'm the oldest student over here." And we're students. Talmid Chacham, humility, knowing I'm always learning from somebody else. I'm a student. I'm always a student. Never am I. And by the way, actually, the word philosophy means to love wisdom. To love wisdom. It's also that idea of wanting to learn more. But here, and they came and they decided to give answers about every question in the world. things that are out of their restriction, things that are out of their world of knowledge, because they have a gun to their head, right? The emperor says, you have to give answers for everything. So he'll give answers for everything. So the king doesn't like this answer. He says, I don't agree with what you're saying. If someone is saying something that is true, something that's right, and now you're going to tell me a whole historical story about how he conquered, he doesn't come from the nation that's inherited the wisdom. He comes from the nation that inherits the aesthetics and the beauty and the art and all the things. But because of that, he's saying something that's real. He's saying, I have proof that the world has always existed. And you're blowing it off by some story saying that because he's not from the nation of Shem, and therefore he didn't inherit the wisdom from the godly wisdom, that's the inheritance of Shem, and therefore, and once the superpower was gone, that was it. You never saw another deep philosopher in Greece, not before and not after. Yes.
It says that Aristotle provided proof. What proof did Aristotle provide in order to give this assessment?
That's exactly what we're gonna ask the next question. Exactly. Then we're going to go in to discuss that question, because he said he gave proof. So wait, what proof did he give? What proof do you have that the world always existed? Okay? And that's exactly what he's saying. But he's saying he has proof. The king is coming from the understanding that he believes they have proof. A lot of times these philosophers, they speak with such great words, and they have such, they sound like they're so smart, they must know everything, they must have proof. Right? But let's say they have proof, and the king believes they have proof. That the world always existed. And we'll explain how they say that. Amar Chaver, Ken, let me take you into I'm going to take you into the lab of Aristotle now. Okay? Because you're saying I have to just accept, don't give me the historical stories about his wisdom, it didn't come from Shem. Tell me, if he's saying something is truth, accept the truth. The Rambam says, Kabel et ha'emet mimi she'amra. Somebody says something that's truthful. You don't like the guy, you think he's an idiot, he does a lot of things wrong. Okay, you can discuss that issue, but if he's saying something that's true, then accept the truth from whoever says it. The truth is the truth. Is the truth. So he says, now let me explain to you, says the rabbi. Ken כי כן הוא הטריח שכלו ומחשבתו מפני שלא הייתה בידו מסורת ממי שיאמין בקבלתו. So first of all, as we mentioned, why was it important that I told you that he didn't come from Shem and he has no lineage, he has no rabbi, he has no teacher that goes way back and tells him from teacher to teacher down to him. He had to figure everything out on his own, as if it just popped out of nowhere, and he had to come up with answers for everything. So he says, let me explain to you. First of all, he had no masot. He had no tradition of wisdom that was handed down to him. מי שיאמין בקבלתו והגה בראשית העולם ואחריתו והקשה עליו מחשבתו לצייר ההתחלה. So he was sitting, I'm taking you into the lab of Aristotle. He was sitting there breaking his head. And he's saying, wait, I can't believe on one hand that the world always existed. But I also can't believe that the world, was created at a certain time. I'm not sure. He was torn between these two opposite understandings. Okay? And then he decided it's time to make a decision. Okay? He could not digest the concept that the world starts from nothing. Because, again, the job of science is to explain the material, to explain the facts. So how could I explain something if it doesn't exist? You're saying it comes from nothing? It just suddenly appeared? He can't understand that. So he couldn't digest the concept that something comes from nothing. And therefore he just said, if something can't come from nothing, then obviously it always existed. Right? But also that doesn't make sense. Because what does that mean that the world always existed. Where did it come from? Right? So, where did God come from? Right? Like these are questions that you can't understand. So, like we said, because everything has a reason, right? We see in the world, everything has a reason, something that leads to something else. So, what's the first reason? What was the first thing that led to everything? So that's God. So, what's God's reason? Why did God create God? Right? Again, and that is something, and that's something we say God is His own reason. God created Himself. Okay? And it's very hard to explain. But to say that the world was created something from nothing, that is completely not something that he can accept. But we don't have to be worried about that question. Why? Because we were given from Masoret, from Adam Arishon, down to Noah, down to generation to generation, handed down from Moshe Rabbeinu and the prophets that the world was created something from nothing. What they call today the Big Bang Theory. It works perfectly with what we're saying. There was nothing and suddenly everything was created. Right? So we don't need that childish statement. The world always existed. Right? A philosopher could never come up in his mind with the understanding, could never say that the world was created. Right? So he had to say, he had no choice. He had to say the world always was created. Not that he has proof, but it's easier for him to explain than the fact that the world was created something from nothing. Because they don't have prophecy. The only way to know that the world was created is by prophecy. So it's not a question for science. It's a question for prophecy, whether the world was created or not. Right? And that brings us back to the important question. Is there such a thing as Ratzon Hashem? Is there such a thing as the will of God? Does God want us to do certain things? If he created the world, if there's a creator and he made it for a purpose, he also wants us to do certain things. So the implications are very big. If the world always existed, then who cares? There's no purpose. Right? So Aristotle has no scientific proofs. That's very important to know. There's no scientific proof that the world always existed. Right? So here we are. Right? So we said science only talks about explaining things that you can prove. For example, you put your hand into fire, it burns. But why does fire, right? I could explain to you that if you put your hand in fire, it will burn you. But science can't explain what causes fire to burn, to be hot. Right? For the world of holiness, of Kedusha, it's above proof. And therefore you need prophecy for that. And this is what he says, V'lo ra'ah, and he didn't ask, V'lo ra'ah, lish'ol al minyan shnei mi she'alef alav. And he didn't think, maybe I should ask people who are before me about how old the world is, or when the world was created, or was the world created. Et yachasu bnei Adam, and how did people, like, where did they come from? Adam, Noach, where does this, he came like, as if he just was, how do you say, he was just parachuted into the world from nowhere, and he doesn't have to be involved with the past, and he doesn't have to ask any questions, and he knows everything, and this is a very high level of pride. Right? But if he was from the nation that מקובלות מפורסמות שאינו יכול לדחות אותם, היה מתעסק בקשיותם מופתיו להחזיק החידוש עם הקשיו, כאשר החזיק קדמות אשר יותר קשה לקבל. He's like, and if he was an honest person, he would have said, I don't know. I'm not sure. Either the world was always existed, or it was always created something from nothing, or there was really created, but I can't come with because he was 50-50. So he was 50-50 in his questions.
This is the
This is the Aristotle,
that's okay.
the philosopher. Okay? And therefore he said that the world always existed, which is harder to accept the fact than the fact that the world was created. Okay? Amar Kuzari. So now the king asks him after this answer again. And again, remember what we're going back is again that a whole nation doesn't lie. Right? A whole nation of millions of people. They don't lie. If it was, right? And the fact that we had Matan Torah, we received the Torah, we saw God speaking to man, this is like to Moshe Rabbeinu and speaking to us. This was the proof that was it. And it's crazy. They say that even till the receiving of the Torah, people didn't believe Moshe Rabbeinu was really, maybe he was tricking, maybe he was a great magician, maybe he did, but that experience was the final, how do you say, acceptance for everybody. Finally accepted it, and we're a stuffed neck nation, and there were wise people there. And we like to think that people were primitive and people didn't. There was a very high level of science and technology, and not like today, but it was people were very advanced, and they did not accept when Moshe Rabbeinu came until we said, until we actually saw Hashem, going back to that proof. Amar Kuzari, yesh b'mofet achra titpashet basechel. So now he asks, could there be a decision, a final decision? Like this is the king asking the rabbi that maybe this is not something that is just 50-50 and he was trying to figure it out. Maybe it does have proof. Maybe there's proof. Maybe I have proof, and if I could bring you proof that the world always existed. You're saying it was a philosophical decision, that he made a decision, the world always existed. And it was a philosophical discussion, it was not based on any facts or any proof. Right? He says there is, and I think there is, says the king. I think there is proof that the world always existed. How did Aristotle prove that the world always existed? He did it according to intellectual discussion. How do you say that in Hebrew? Nituchim higioniyim. Like he dissected, he explained, he you're saying it's just like a decision he made like off the top of his head. I'm saying no, he made it based on, the king says, logic analysis and proofs. Right? Right? And even if he would say that the world, let's say he would say that the world, I accept the fact that the world, like the prophets say, was created from something from nothing. He would still have to deal with this question of the people that say the world always existed, right? Because he has proofs. So he says, don't blow me off by saying that Aristotle didn't get prophecy, and therefore, right, he didn't get prophecy that the world was created something from nothing. He's like, I don't believe that. And therefore he pulled it off. So he says, there is no proof. There's no way to bring any scientific proof that the world always existed. Okay? Science is always something that is called, how do you say, meshu'ar, something that is questionable, right? Science never makes, how do you say, decisions. This is the way it is. It always changes, right? The job of science is to explain, how do you say, tofaot, phenomenons, to explain things that work. I drop something, there's gravity, so I can explain that. It keeps happening over and over again. So therefore, I need to explain that. So there's a law of gravity, because it's something that repeats itself. But I'm not going to say that this is the way it works. I'm saying this is the way it's working. This is the way I can explain it. Right? So, how can you say that Aristotle says the world always existed? Did he see it? Was someone there and saw the world being created? How could you prove it? Right? It's all theoretical assumptions. Aristotle was a great scientist, and we're not saying he's worthless, and we're not making small of the fact that he used his intellect to the highest potential of human beings. But as a philosopher, his teacher was Plato. He had higher levels of philosophy. He had much more different topics, different traits. He was much more expansive. Plato was more spiritual, and Aristotle was more physical, was more materialistic. The Rambam calls Aristotle Tachlit HaSechel HaEnoshi, the highest potential of human intellect. He was very high. And but Aristotle was locked in to the materialistic human brain thought. And that's it. And therefore material always existed. And God doesn't see you, and God doesn't care, and God doesn't have any desire, and God didn't create the world. The world always existed. Amar Chaver, u'me'ayin lanu mofet b'shela zot. He's like, 1 second. You're saying you have proof? I want to tell you something very important, says the rabbi. Me'ayin lanu mofet b'shela zot. You're saying that the world always existed, that there's proof? I want you to know something. Is a very important message. Chalila la'el shetavo Torah b'ma she'yitche re'aya o mofet. I want you to know something very important. And this is, we're learning in 67. There will never be, and there doesn't exist, a contradiction between Torah and things that you can prove, things that you could see. The Torah will never come and say something that's against the facts of reality of what you see and what you experience and what is real. Right? So we said, anything you could prove to me intellectually, the Torah is not going to come and say that's wrong. There's no battle between the sechel and the Torah. The science and the Torah shouldn't have any. There shouldn't be any war between them. Actually, science could be the greatest help to believe in God. It's like my rabbi says. Let's say I tell you about somebody who's incredible. He can do this and do that and do this. I go on and on about all the amazing things he does, and you're sitting there falling asleep. Okay, so what? And then at the end of the whole discussion, I'm telling you, I'm going on and on about how amazing this guy is, who lives on the other side of the world. And then I say to you, by the way, you didn't know this, but he's your brother. Suddenly, you say, wait, where does he live? What does he do? What did you say? What? Until you have an understanding that God, that you have a relationship with God, that He cares about you, that He sees you, that He, like we said, philosophers say God doesn't hear you, doesn't see you, doesn't care about your prayers, He doesn't, like He's not, He's way beyond, He's so far, He's so above everything that He's not involved in anything here. So, and this is an important understanding because the next thing we're going to read. So we said there's no contradiction between science and Torah. There's no contradiction between sechel and nevuah, right? But this idea of that, how could you use the science to actually connect to God, be close to God, is if you understand that you have a connection with God. You have a relationship with God. If you don't understand you have a relationship or a connection with God, everything you're going to learn or you're going to see in nature is going to be not going to bring you at all to any level of love of God or wanting to be close to God. You could sit, look at the sunset and the rivers flowing, and it won't bring you to say, I love God, God loves me. Because it's like that person in China that you never met, never saw, and who cares of amazing things he could do.
What the expressions of this connection? Like, how we feel it, that we got connection with it. How we say to us.
How do we express the feeling? How do we connect
Yeah.
it? That's the mitzvot. The mitzvot are, God gives us ways. It's incredible. Imagine a woman says to the man, you don't love me, you don't care about me, and you don't do anything for me. What are you supposed to do with that? But if she says, if you go and do this for me, if you go to the store and shop for me and help me get me this, I'll be so grateful. That will make me feel so much love for you. Thank you so much. When you put it down to what needs to be done, God not only says, "V'ahavta et Hashem Elohecha," He also gives us 613 commandments that He says, now this is how you can have a relationship, have a connection. I want you to do this, I want you to do this, I want you to do that, and this is what I want. And now you can have a connection. The mitzvot is bringing that love, that deep connection that you want to actually have a relationship. That's the mitzvot. There's a book called Chovat Levavot, Duties of the Heart, and he says that the number one motivation to be able to help yourself do mitzvot is hakarat hatov. What is hakarat hatov? Being appreciative, being grateful. If you understand that God gives you your life, He gives you everything, and then it motivates you, it makes you want to. What is God asking from you? He gives you everything, health and food and life, everything. And what is He asking from you? Daven, please daven. Put on tefillin and daven. And if I ask you in the middle of the night, can you come at 2 o'clock in the morning, help me move my apartment? I have a fridge I need to move out of the 10th floor. Can you come carry it down the stairs at 2 o'clock in the morning? What? But if you were my best friend and you were there for me every single day and night, and we fought together, who knows what we did in the army, and who knows everything we did, and you say, I need you to at 2 o'clock in the morning help me move the fridge. You'll be there like that. Hakarat hatov. So now we're going to ask a very big question. So the rabbi says to the king, first of all, I want to make it very clear, there's no argument or discussion between prophecy, Torah, God, and science. There's no fight. Anything you could prove to me, the Torah will accept. If you could prove to me something that I can see that has facts, I'll accept that. There's no way, there's no problem with it. Like the Rav Kook, he was so happy when the theory of evolution came into thought. Not because it's true or not true. He said now people are starting to think in a way that things happen gradually and not just suddenly things just happen. That things happen through effort, through work. That's a very important thought. Geula kima kima. The redemption happens slowly, step by step. Things happen with stages. Tshuva, another word for evolution is tshuva. But what if now comes a new scientist and proves that the evolution was wrong? Okay, great. So it's not going to change my problem. I used the idea behind it that was important to me, not the fact if it's true or not true. It's like there's no argument between mathematics and music. There's no right. These are two different worlds. You're trying to use science. You're trying to invade areas that are not part of your world. Knowing if the world was created or not created is a question for prophecy. It's not a question for science. The only way we could know that the world was created is because prophets told us the world was created. So then the next question is, Achtavat Torah, what about miracles? So you're saying that the Torah is not against any facts of nature and not against science. But what about nature? What about miracles? What about miracles? And this is a very fine line. Because you have nations, you have people that say everything's a miracle, there's no science, there's no facts, there's no proofs, there's no reality. Other people say everything's a miracle, they're only reality. Where does Judaism look at miracles? because that's something that really miracles. They do fight against facts of science and proof, right? Where is the place of miracles in our religion, in our belief? What are miracles all about? Yes, there are miracles that actually change the reality of things that we see in the world. Something becomes something else. Like Moshe Rabbeinu takes a stick, throws it down, a miracle, it becomes a snake. So this is what he says, a very important lesson. How do we look at miracles? Are miracles destroying our whole belief of nature, of facts, of science, where does Judaism fit? Where do miracles? What are miracles all about? And the answer is, here says the Kuzari, is that miracles, the same way you have laws of nature, you have laws of a country, then you have laws for a time of war. They're also part of the order. Yes, there are miracles, but they don't come to destroy nature. They don't come to destroy the facts of the world. They come to just show that God created the world, that God is watching everything. He cares about what's happening here. He loves his people. All the miracles are only there to show that God can do it. It says that when we left Egypt, after the miracles of splitting the sea and the 10, who came to fight against us? Amalek. Why did Amalek come to fight against us? Because he heard about the miracles. He says, no, there can't be miracles. We have to get rid of these people. They're saying there's miracles. Saying there's miracles, saying that the world can change, shows that God is in control of everything, that God wants, that God cares. And miracles are like the veil opens and God reveals himself. When a miracle is God showing, I am in control of everything. I'm running everything. I can change everything at any moment I want because I'm standing. It's all in front of me. It's like one of the I think Rabbi Yitzchak, he explains a parable. He says, imagine a king is sitting around and he tells his servants, "You're going to be the minister of the south. You're going to go to the area of the ocean, and you're going to go to the area of the mountains." And he tells all the ministers, "Go. As long when they leave, then that's it. They do what they're told to do." But if suddenly the sea splits, it means that they never left. They never said, "Goodbye, king, I'm going to do my job." They suddenly are it's like they were always standing before the king, because the king said, "No, actually split." So miracles have a function. Yes, when someone is a scientist and his job is to, don't act like there isn't miracles. Like, study the science. You come to a doctor, don't tell me a miracle. Do your job the best, as if there's no miracles, as if there's no reality. There's no other reality than the facts, the proofs. This is how I want you to be. But the idea that the miracles were not there to destroy the facts of what we believe in the world. Miracles are there to just show that God can do it whenever he wants. He's in control of everything. He's guiding everything. And he can decide and choose how to do things. Okay? Only who created the laws, the nature, can decide when he wants to change it, how he wants to change it. And that's why we always talk about the coming out of Egypt. And we always remember that. Yes, God doesn't want to every single day change nature. He wants everything to run the way it's supposed to run, and that's wonderful. But we have to always hold on to that, because now we see a righteous person and an evil person. They walk on a banana, they fall. The tzaddik and the rasha, they both fall on the same banana, because nature is blind. But once in a while, God he shows it's not blind. Suddenly, the Egyptians this ocean covers the Egyptian, kills the Egyptians, and the Jewish people walk through. And it knows who's the tzaddik and who's not. So God says, I know it, I see it. I don't run the world that way every moment because I want you to have freedom of choice. I want you to be able to do tshuva. That's why we don't, it's like you put your hand in fire, you get burnt. But you do an avera, nothing happens. Why? Because God doesn't care? Because he's not involved? No, because he loves you, because he cares about you. The Siyat Yisharim explains this in depth. Because God cares about it, loves you, wants to give you a chance to do tshuva and give you time to come to the understanding of what you're doing, and that's it's an important thing. So we'll end here. We keep going. Back to it's a deep question. The whole thing of the world being created, or was it always existed, or did God create it? So we're going to go into a little bit more, and then hopefully we'll move forward. Sorry if it's going a little slow, but
شكرا.
Hazaku Baruch.